Addiction never affects just the addict. It affects all of us. Recovering from addiction and alcoholism is also a life-changing battle for families dealing with a loved one's addiction. Numerous programs support addicts as they reclaim their lives, while their families face their own challenges without the same guidance. You're listening to Voices in Courage with KL Wells, where we transform the lives of the families and loved ones of addicts and alcoholics from surviving to thriving in the midst of chaos. Tune in as we highlight vulnerable stories of families who have addicted relatives and friends and learn how they have dealt with the challenges of isolation, desperation, and shame. If you are seeking ways to live your best life, then we welcome you into this safe space. Be a part of change today with your host, KL Wells.
So we're back at Voices in Courage, and I am just super excited to have the person on that I have on today with me. It's the first person that we've had on that is very familiar with the broad spectrum of public policy, the criminal justice system, social work, so on and so forth. And just to give you a little bit of context, a little bit less than 5 years ago when my son was arrested, he was in drug psychosis and went to jail. And I was like a deer caught in the headlights because I didn't have any experience in this arena whatsoever. And my son was really out of his mind in so many ways. And so I got on the bat phone and called one of my dearest friends and said, who do you know in the area that might be able to give me some nugget of information? And she sent me to Grace Burkhart. And so Grace has always held a very special place in my heart from the very beginning, because she was one of those touchstones that I think in the midst of the trauma and tragedy and crisis of dealing with a child in addiction, when I as a parent really didn't know what to do next, Grace was a calming voice in the midst of the storm and let me know, oh, there's a mental health professional within the jail system that I can call and check on my son. And as simple as that sounds, that was hugely relieving to me. So it is with great joy and heartfelt thanks that I welcome Grace Burkhart onto the show with me today.
Hello, I'm Grace. Nice to meet you guys. Happy to be here.
Great. So as we talked a little bit before we got on, where I like to start is like, how in the world did you get on this path of social work? And then, all the different places that you've been, your experience is quite extensive throughout the whole spectrum of substance abuse disorder and the criminal justice system and public policy and social work, and which I think gives you a window in and a perspective on areas that a lot of people don't have. And so this is the conversation I want to open up to our listeners and hopefully spread beyond here, because there's a navigation that people can access that they don't even begin to know. So what's kind of your origin of story into this world?
Yeah. So I was a hairstylist for about 12 years. I got married super young, had kids super young, got divorced when I was 25.
Wow.
Was a single mom with 2 babies, had no idea how I was going to do anything. I was super poor, super young. Then I met my current husband and we got married, and he got clean and sober. I think he'll be 7 years, September 25th. Woo!
Congratulations.
Yep. Yeah. So the beginning of our marriage was okay. And then it got really rough because his addiction, he was really sick. So I got pregnant with my third child, Miles. And it seemed like my husband's addiction got worse when I got pregnant, or just the stress of it was causing him to actively use more and drink more. And so I really believed, I think it was 2 weeks before I had had my third child, I was like, oh shit, like I'm going to be a single mom again for the second time. So I just was like, I got to figure this out. And I just knew right then I had to go back to school, and I had to go back to school because I had to get a job that was I could be my own baby daddy. Right. And I didn't. So yeah, so that's when I decided to go back to school. I wasn't sure about anything. I was not sure if I was going to be homeless with 3 kids. I wasn't sure if I was going to be married or not married. I wasn't sure if my husband was going to get clean and sober. And so I started that journey. I had the baby. I waited till like a year, but I had started sort of applying for student aid. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I just sort of fell into the social work pot during that time. So my husband did end up getting clean and sober. He went to treatment. Like I said, he's been sober for 7 years now. It's been a wild ride, but things are wonderful. And I'm so happy we made it. I have no idea how the hell we made it, but we did.
Well, that might be another conversation.
Oh my God, that's a whole nother podcast. It's a whole nother podcast.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when I got into Evergreen, I made it into a program called Gateways for Incarcerated Youth. And I really don't even know. It was literally like the universe was like, this is what you're doing. Like, here you go. And so I was like, okay, cool. We'll try that out. So I went to work with kids who were incarcerated at Green Hill School. And I remember feeling like this was definitely work I wanted to be involved. And basically we were going to college together, earning college credits and working as a team to like get our degrees. And it was awesome. And shortly I found out like really how frustrating the system was, and the criminal justice system, and how these kids were here and why they were here was just like mind blowing. And I was like, oh, this is so awful. Like, I really want to make a change in this system. And so that's sort of like in a nutshell how I got started in the social work field. So then from there, let's see. So I did Gateways. I worked for community court in Olympia as the case manager, and I was doing an internship, and I was learning all these wonderful things about social work. And I was working with all kinds of people who were involved in the justice system who had just challenges and barriers that were unbelievable. And it was really rewarding work. It was really like, yep, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. So that was sort of how I got started. Then I did an internship in the Washington State Senate, and I got to work on Tacoma District 27, Jeannie Darnielle's team. And that was incredible. She does a lot of work with, or she did, she's now not in the Senate. She's retired from there. She was doing the juvenile justice work. So that was really important. So I got to see the policy side of the work. And then I ended up working for Lakewood Public Defense, and that's where I met you.
Right.
And I don't think your son was in Lakewood. I actually think he was in Pierce County Jail. But I was also doing other cases. Like a lot of my clients were going to Pierce County Jail or Nisqually Jail. And that I sort of, fumbled into the Lakewood Public Defense gig because they were like, hey, we got this grant and we're all lawyers. We don't know what your job is. Just let us know what you want. Here's an office. We're here for it. Whatever you got, we'll take it. And I was like, cool. So I really just like scouted out and carved out through Tacoma and Pierce County, like what all the resources were. And luckily, Pierce County does have a ton of resources when it comes to social work. So it was that was such a great time to be in Pierce County. And it was such a wonderful, wonderful job. Still to this day, one of my all-time favorite jobs.
And what was the period that you had that job, Grace?
Like years wise?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I think that was 2000. Let's see, I was in the Senate in 2018. So it must have been 18 to 19. And I would have lived there forever, but it was on a grant. So I had no health care. I had no benefits of any kind. And I had to support a family, So I would have stayed there forever, but I had to get benefits and I got offered a state job. So I was like, oh yeah, I got to take this because you can't beat that, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. So I want the audience to hear this because she was very shortly in this time frame. And that's when I made the phone call. Was late August of 2018. And I just love how things line up because you were there when I needed you the most. and you had enough experience to be able to help calm my nerves and storm and give me some guidance. And I think we're a little bit of kindred spirits here, because you were able to take a job and create what was most needed and piece together, it sounds like, the massive amount of resources that were available but weren't connected.
Yep, because a lot of social services are super siloed, right? So everybody is, and this is just my personal opinion, everybody's competing for funding because a lot of it is through grants, right? And a lot of it's through state funding or federal funding. And so everybody's competing for that. So nobody seems to coordinate well together, and that's just sort of how it is. But when you have like these little jobs, these little specific jobs that I think are so important, is the connectors, right? It's the people who can connect all the different pieces.
Yep.
And it's just vital to the system, right? It's vital to people surviving the system and making it out alive and okay and intact. So
yeah. Well, I mean, that's why I started Voices in Courage a number of years ago, was because I was like, I had to put together the stuff that I needed in order to navigate and still maintain my sanity in the midst of it. And I was like, why is that happening at this juncture of where we are, societally? I have to actually cobble this together. You've got to be kidding me. So it is wild. And so, okay, so from that connector point, which I love that time frame was just divinely placed.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So here's what I want to say again, is that your information gave me the next stepping stone into navigating the system. And I would say that the vast majority of people, parents that are dealing with kids that are getting arrested and so on and so forth, they have no idea how to navigate the system. They have no idea that there's a mental health professional. They have no idea there potentially is a drug court or all the other things that might be available. And this was another thing that, we touched on before we got on here, was just this notion that I'm very clear that my son's arrest probably saved his life.
Sure.
And because he was in drug psychosis and kind of out of his mind. And what I watch over and over and over again is parents or friends bailing their loved ones out because they're afraid of the system and because it's unknown.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is unfortunately where we are today. Like, sometimes being arrested is the intervention that saves somebody's life, because I think when you're in addiction or you're in a mental health crisis, you likely have been on this journey for a while, and you've likely, burned some bridges with your friends and your families that love you the most and would do anything to help you, but you push them as far away as you can. And you don't have many people that have your best intentions anymore, right? And so, you being arrested, I mean, it sucks, but it's true. Like, sometimes that is what's going to save your life. And I think then, each court is different and each jurisdiction is different in what they have to offer, right? But like you were saying, there's oftentimes, especially today, and I know you're in Oregon, but this was in Washington.
Yes.
In Washington state, we are super, we're ahead of the game. I think Oregon probably is too, actually, because they did some decrim laws recently in the past about substance. But Washington state has a lot of options at courts. A lot, like in the urban areas, I'll say. Rural areas are tougher, just because, frankly, courts don't have the funding or the resources in that community if it's rural. But certainly in the more urban areas, courts tend to have options like, therapeutic courts, so mental health court, drug court, community court, pretrial diversion is a big deal right now. So so there's always options. I think the tough part is finding the person who knows all the options, right?
Right.
So that was like luckily what I was doing at that time. They just happened to have me around, but.
Yeah. And so kind of given your own personal experience and your professional experience, what's like a couple things that you would recommend to parents or loved ones that have somebody that's now in the system?
Well, I think that's a really good question. And I think that there's a couple different answers or pieces to the answer.
Mhm.
So it would depend. So there's different levels to the system, right?
Mhm.
So there's
Mhm.
like being arrested, pre-trial. So that's like before you go to trial or before you get arraigned, right?
Mhm.
And that's a pretty important spot. So we could talk about that. So when you're getting arrested, or if someone's getting arrested that you love, I mean, hopefully you find out because they call you, but a lot of times you don't. You find out through someone else, or maybe the jail calls you because they identify your loved one and you're the next person to them. I think that, I think you can call, certainly always find out if there's a mental health staff at the jail that they're at, if that's one of the things that you're concerned about. Oftentimes, public defense offices will have a social worker. So always check and see if they have one of those. What else? I mean, it's always good to get a lawyer, like no matter what, but right, like not everybody can afford a lawyer and a lot of times that's not an option because our justice system is a dark place. And, unfortunately it's like buying a house. You get as much justice as you can afford, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times, which sucks, but that's real. Yeah. So I would find out social worker through public defense. I would find out, do they have a mental health person at the jail who can either continue or get your person back on their meds if they have a prescription? Because a lot of times, like when people get arrested, they maybe were taking meds at one point and they stop taking them. Well, you can get them back on their meds in jail, which is nice because then they can stabilize and they can think clearly and maybe they can make some different choices or decide how they want their plan to look and participate on that. What else? Social worker. And then honestly, like finding out what kinds of therapeutic court options they have, or what kinds of diversions that they have to offer through the court. And is this the person's first time? Is this being arrested, right? That's going to make a huge difference too. Do they have an extensive criminal record? Do they have a little bit of a criminal record? Those things will all be considered when if they're looking at different options for therapeutic court options. But honestly, like, I think one of the things is be really nice to yourself, like really nice to yourself.
Yeah.
Think that like trying to think rationally when you're dealing with something like this and you're having this crisis with a person that you're emotionally attached to is almost impossible.
Right.
So, be nice to yourself, take time, slow down, grab some people that you trust, and be like, dude, I'm out of my mind right now. I cannot make good decisions for myself. And grab the people that you trust to help guide you on that path. Because you're going to want to be like, I need to get him out of jail. We just need to get this done. Blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? You're going to want to react because emotionally we're just like wrecked. We just can't believe, and we don't want our person in jail. Yeah. And so I think that like surround yourself with people that you trust who can, and you have to trust your people. You have to be like, this is what I want to do, but I need you to tell me if this makes sense, because I can't actually see clearly right now. Right.
Yeah.
Because I love this person and I just want to save them. But we all know, right, in substance use disorder and in mental health crisis, saving someone doesn't look like how we feel inside.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're hitting a hot topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. One is I had to get really clear about who I could trust to give me as best advice that was non-judgmental.
Right.
And this was where we kind of went down the rabbit hole of a lot of judgment.
Yeah.
And a lot of shame and silence. And I got really clear very quickly who I could call and who I couldn't call. Because I had an aspiration fairly early on that I wasn't going to stay in crisis with this. That I was going to move my way through struggling and surviving. And I didn't want to just survive this. I actually wanted to thrive in the midst of this. And so that was a higher aspiration than what I found at going to an Al-Anon meeting or, some other support group like that. Sure. They weren't speaking my language, so to speak.
Yep. And I don't think that's oftentimes everybody's different, right? But I think oftentimes like, that's not when you jump into that, and I think it's like, you're a high powered woman who's like, okay, let's get this done and let's wrap it up and let's like put it to bed because I got shit to do, right? I got to wake up tomorrow. I got to go hiking. I got a podcast. But like, I mean, that's all like, it doesn't work like that, right? And
exactly.
We don't get choices when you get into that situation. It's unfair and it's uncomfortable and it's terrible and I hate it. But
well, I mean, to say, Grace, is what I learned in this is that my son's journey was not my journey. It wasn't my journey to orchestrate. It wasn't my journey to fix or change or whatever. My role in his journey was to just love him.
100%.
And bailing him out would have been a failed strategy. Getting him a different attorney other than a public defender would have been a failed strategy in my son's case, because, we tend to think that jail might be the bottom.
Yeah, no, not at all. Never. It's never.
No. So, because we're in a different mindset than somebody who's using drugs. And so we need to learn what the mindset is and what the game of this is and what our role and responsibility is in this. And it is not to fix it, because that never works.
Nope. And fixing is such a complex word, because I think like you can say, yeah, I'm gonna help you fix this, but that's gonna look different than what we like think fixing looks like, right? Like you said, you're going to be kind and you're going to love that person and you're going to support them. But again, support is going to look different than what we want to think it looks like.
It's not going to look like money. It's not going to look like you get a place to live. It's not going to look like, you have to have the courage to shut all those things down.
Yeah.
And this was my journey is I learned to just consistently deliver the message that no matter what you do, you will always be loved. Yeah. And that was it.
Yeah, that's it. And it's like those little simple things, like when you're talking about like how I made a big impact on your journey in this process, right? Like I know I was connected, but I was just kind to you, and I was just responsive to you and I was just doing my job, but I think that like, those things do matter so huge in this process. And, you mentioned shame. And I think that is the biggest part of this whole thing when you're in this situation is, of course, you're like, what did I do wrong? And then you internalize it and you bring it to the surface, and anything that you've ever felt shameful about is now at the surface. It has nothing to do with this situation, but it's really there. You know what I mean? So just be kind to someone and mostly kind to yourself. Like if you're the parent or the spouse or the friend or the partner or whatever, like just remember that like this is bringing up a whole bunch of shit that has nothing to do with this.
Yes.
And it's all over you and you can't escape it and you're stuck in it. And just remember that like you got to go slow, you got to be kind, and like no, it's okay to be a wreck. Like it's all good. And like just take it 1 minute at a time, and there's no race. It's not a race, because it ain't no race to win. There's no finish line that you're looking for.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things that you said there. One is that just changing the pace and taking care of myself.
Yeah.
And I also give that the context of there's nothing like a crisis with a child that brings you to your knees, cracks you wide open, and gives
your
you
soul out. Snatches your soul out.
Yes, and gives you the opportunity to do the personal development work, the emotional work, the spiritual work, the mental work, all of it. And he has been my greatest teacher and my greatest gift because of that experience and the continued experience with him too, is I just keep upping how I take care of myself, who I am in the world, my mental mindset. Every time he ratchets it up, I take it up another notch in terms of how I handle and deal with myself and allow for the opportunity embedded. And so, yes, I wouldn't change anything about this at all. It has been really quite extraordinary on so many levels. And I would not be the person I am today if it hadn't been for him.
That's awesome. I'm glad you know that, because I think sometimes we can get trapped in the shame game or the blame game or any of that super easy, right? And like, there's always moments where we like have the tunnel of all the bad things that we kind of get sucked into, you know? But yeah, I'm glad you know that, because that is absolutely the truest thing is you're doing it and you're doing a great job.
Thank you. Yeah, I challenge people to, I guess, explore the gifts and lessons embedded in this experience for themselves.
Yep.
Because there are so many people that I've talked to in the journey, but also on the podcast, that it has been an awakening for them as parents. And it has given them the opportunity to do the basically shitstorm work that just got stuffed and arrested. And if they have the courage to take a hold of it and really do the work, their lives have completely transformed too. Yeah. So
every time you have the opportunity to be like rebirthed into a new person. And I think that like, but you gotta take that opportunity and just go in it, you know, and you'll make it through. That's what I do know. You'll make it through no matter what. And it's scary and awful, but
yes.
do it.
And I want to go back to what you said earlier is, if you don't have the circle community that supports you in this journey in the way that we're talking about here, you need to find one person.
Yeah. And I think too, to add to that, you know, I have done lots of work and therapy and all the things for things in my own life. And I think one of the most helpful things that someone ever gave me was they were like, get a piece of paper and make a map. So that when you are in crisis, right? Because when our loved ones are in crisis, our kids specifically, we are there deeper than anybody, right? And we're completely blind and we cannot see, and we're drowning just as much as they are. And so if we take that map when we're not in crisis and we map it out and we say, how do I take care of myself spiritually, emotionally, physically? Who are my people? And if you don't have people, that's okay. But how do you take care of yourself? Right.
Yeah.
What are the ways in which that when you're not doing well in this area, what do? Do you go for a hike? Do you swim? Do you meditate? Do you go to church? Whatever it is, you literally write it down. And so that when the shitstorm shows up, you don't have to think, because we forget that our brains don't actually work in the shitstorm. So we just pull the map out. It's already there. You don't have to think, and you go, okay, I've got to call Barbara, and then I have to go to church on Sunday, or I have to go, sorry, my alarm's going off. You do all the things, and you may do them with tears in your eyes and shame in your heart, but you're going to do them, and then you're going to be okay. And you just continue to do those things and walk alongside your person in your sadness, and it's all good, and y'all are going to make it. And the coolest part too is nothing stays the same. Everything is temporary, right?
Correct.
So you just keep saying that to yourself in that crisis, like, this is all going to, move forward in some way.
Yeah. Well, and, in the 5 years that we've been really in it, every time something happens, my muscle gets stronger.
Yes.
So my muscle's pretty strong at this point.
Yeah.
And I have a self-care program that I'm running all the time. There are things in my life now that are absolutely non-negotiable in terms of my self-care, so that when the next thing shows up, because it will, whether it's Sam or whether it's in my life, something's going to show up. And I am as solid as I possibly can be to navigate that in ways that I was not, certainly 5 years ago.
Yep. And that's just, I think life's kind of ebb and flow, right? Like, that's what we do know is like, sometimes it's good. And honestly, like, you can be the strongest you've ever been and still get racked, like you can still, and it's okay, because what do we know? We know that like, we can pick it up again, and we know like, oh, okay, right. So I've been racked again. and life is here to show me otherwise.
Yes.
And I know that we'll get through it, and I'm going to climb out of this, and it's all good, and I'm here for it.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So if you keep thinking, I think about it as kind of you dip down, you rise up, you dip down, you rise up, but it's a trajectory up.
Yep. I think so too.
Yeah. And so I can see the micro successes that lead to the macro successes, building a stronger resiliency muscle and all the things. So I want to ask you a question. I'm assuming that your personal experience with your husband has informed and influenced your work in ways that some people would not have a window into the realities of what loving someone who is dealing with substance abuse disorder looks like, sounds like, and feels like. And so could you just speak to that a little bit in terms of having that experience and that window in?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a couple things. I mean, yeah, like when you live with somebody and you love someone who is in recovery and you've lived through their journey, or a piece of their journey. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like you learn so much about how you love people, why you love people, why you're fucked up, why they're fucked up, like all the things, right?
Yeah.
And also like why it's all good and it's all part of it. And if you both decide like we want to keep going and we both are going to do this work, then you have to really go through the fire, and so then you actively experience the fire together.
Right.
And and you get burned and it's okay and you recover and you get up. And I think my husband and I's relationship is certainly one of them. And then, I have 2 kids who are high needs for mental health. I have 3 kids and I have a 17-year-old daughter and then I have a 8-year-old son. And so just being their mom too is like an awesome journey and ride. And I learn all the time, mostly about myself, to be honest, like mostly about myself. Cause what we know is we don't change other people.
Right.
Yeah. And that's number one. And so when you get to that station, you start going internal and you're like, oh shit, like I got some work to do. Like I got to figure this out because I still love people in this part of my life. So, yep, that is so true.
So what's one thing that you learned about yourself that was super surprising?
One thing that I learned about myself that's super surprising. I think that you can love people in the struggle. Yes. And you can love people in the struggle and I can recover. You know what I mean? From all this stuff. Because when you're with somebody, right, and like in your family structure who's in active addiction or in active mental health crisis, that impacts you, right?
Yes.
Dents and nicks, or maybe big dents and nicks on you and scars. And so, I think you just learn like, wow, we can all exist in this and we can recover and we can get better and we can grow and we can, and it's awesome. So, I think that, I think just recovery, like that word is not something that I take lightly. And I think use it a lot. And whenever I hear it, I'm like, oh, it's such a deep word, and it means so much to me. So I think, I think recovery, I think everybody can recover. And I think that, another thing that comes to mind that makes me think of like big things that I've learned is we are all only humans, right? Yeah. And we have this capacity. So every day we come into the world with a certain amount of capacity, right? And once that capacity is full, it's full and there's nothing you can do about it to expand it. It just is what it is, right? And so when you have reached your capacity, maybe with a particular person that you love, it's really easy to feel really bad about it. It's really easy because when you get to like the fuck it stage, right? We'll just call that the top of the capacity. No vacancy. We are like, I have no more to give anybody, including this person that I love so much. Yeah. But I should be able to give more. But no, you shouldn't, because you have to keep whole for yourself. What is cool about that, the next part to that big long explanation is there's always somebody next with capacity.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So along the person that you love's journey, watching them go. So if I'm like, you know what, fuck it, I'm out of here, we're getting divorced because I ain't got no more, nothing. I got nothing left, right?
Yeah.
There will always be someone else to help that person in their next phase. And it has nothing to do with you. So you just got to let it go.
Right.
And that's hard. It's hard work. It's hard to like, for our egos, maybe, I don't know, to be like, oh, it's not going to be me. It's not going to be me that maybe makes the impact. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, so, I mean, you are totally speaking to the choir here, because my wife, you know, a few months ago said, I'm done.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay,
yeah,
I hear you.
Yep.
And so there's a cone of silence around Sam at this point. You know, I'm navigating and she's taking a break, and I get it.
Yeah.
So that was again an interesting mindset shift for me.
Yeah.
Was like this thing about you hit capacity and you don't have any more to give.
Yep.
I don't know that I ever hit that. I honestly don't know if I would ever hit that, because I guess I think my story would be right now, I've continued to do so much work spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, to continue to up my capacity to love no matter what.
And do you mean with your son or with your wife?
Both.
Okay. So that's pretty cool.
It's a new place to reside. I mean, her statement of fuck it, I'm done. I can't do this anymore, brought me to another edge.
Oh,
and so I was like, okay, I'm at this edge. What's my story about this?
Yeah.
And who do I choose to be in the next piece of this? And so it's been really interesting to navigate being married to someone who's opted out right now, while I still have a son who is in recovery. Yeah. And as far as we know, just again, 3 months in recovery from fentanyl. And so
that's incredible work. Nice job, buddy. By the way, 3 months on fentanyl, that's a big deal.
It's a huge deal. It's a huge deal. And I'm super proud of myself. And so I kind of, I'm, you know, you're in it and you're watching it at the same time. It's a really kind of interesting dynamic. Yeah. And for the most part, I can really say, I think I'm navigating at a pretty high level, and I love them both. Yeah. And I can free her to do whatever she needs to do around this, and free him to do whatever he needs to do around this. And so, I think that's part of the journey that we're talking about, is it's just a continual unfolding of layers. Yep. That we get to work with.
Yep. And I think too, like when we talk about capacity, like, you know, seeing people come through the justice system. And I remember really specifically, like working in my role as like a case manager in community court. I remember vividly, like folks coming in who had no more family to help, like support them in the way that they needed at that moment. They had no more friends that were able to help them at that moment. And like, I just thought it was such a, you know, I was such a lucky person, because right then at that moment, I had capacity for that. Right. And like, I could not, you know, find them a place, like I couldn't house them in my house or give them my car or give them money. Right. But like, I had a little bit of time to talk to them, you know, and ask them questions sincerely about like, what do you need? Like, what do you want to have today from this experience? And sometimes I think, you know, if someone's been on the journey a long time, they may not have heard that for a long time.
Right.
From anybody.
Right.
And so by just having capacity for whoever is on right in front of you today, right? Like just being kind, or, you know, the little things like asking them something about themselves and what they need, it goes so far. It's so much bigger than, you know, just the way that we think about it. So I think just, you know, if you have capacity, and we don't always have capacity, that's right, okay.
Exactly.
No, it's not every day. It's like, if I have capacity right this second, like ask that dude what he needs. Like one of the things, you know, whenever we go out or something and we'll go downtown to dinner or something, one of the things my husband does not smoke, and I don't smoke cigarettes either anymore. And, but he always has a lighter in his pocket, no matter what. And whenever we're walking, if someone says, hey man, do you have a light? He gives them the lighter, and it's just like his thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think he thinks that it's cool. Like, I think it's cool, but that is like a small example of like, yeah, dude, just keep the lighter. Like, you can just have it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I don't know. I like, maybe that's a weird example, but it's just like those little tiny things, you know, where you can make a difference, where like, you never know.
Yeah. You don't ever know. And that's, I mean, I'm a business coach and consultant. I have dozens of clients that I work with, and everybody has shit going on.
Everybody has a battle that you don't know anything about.
Exactly. And so just being kind and bringing compassion to the table, I think that is the kind of the mantra of the times that we're in.
100%. Yeah. We live in a weird, fucked up, complex world where like everything is going a million miles an hour, and we're all expected to go a million miles an hour. Yeah. And if you don't, then you're in trouble. And so, yeah, I think just slowing down and remembering that people are parents and grandparents and brothers and sisters, and we have complex systems, and we all are complex people, and it's important.
Yeah. So one last question, I'm gonna let you go.
Yeah.
Is I love your energy and your optimism.
Yeah.
And so has that been an acquired thing for you? Or is that kind of just innately who you've been?
Yeah, I have heard that I was just born this way.
Okay.
Honestly, like, my mom is one of my biggest fans, and so is my dad. And they tell lots of stories about this is just the way I was born. And it is not, I would say that it's just kind of innately who I am. I don't know. I just, I don't bring anything but just myself. And you can take it or leave it.
So what's one thing that's non-negotiable for you to keep your flame alive and burning?
Let's see, what's non-negotiable? Coffee, probably. I think that, and drinking coffee outside, preferably. First cup at least. Yeah. Non-negotiable though. I mean, I have it's hard to find non-negotiables because I feel like I have 3 people that run my life, my children. And so everything is negotiable. Jesus, like everything. Not because I want it to be, but because it is, right?
Right.
But I think that, like, as I'm getting older, I'm going to be 40 this year. And I think that what I'm understanding is that what's becoming more and more non-negotiable is pacing myself.
Yeah.
I am sort of refusing to go as fast as some people want me to go, because I'm just not doing it. Like, you want me to go a million miles an hour, I'm probably not your girl. You know, so I think that because I'm not willing. Yeah. So we're getting there. So I'm getting there right now as I'm speaking out loud.
Great. That's awesome.
So I will not go super fast because I'm not going to miss out on my kids' lives.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to not be there for them when they need me. So I think probably my kids are non-negotiable. And also my marriage. I mean, I think that, like, we have to really work hard when you're raising kids to stay connected.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, a couple type priorities are definitely my marriage and my kids, and time with them is super important. At least asking them questions every day, right? Like I pick up my son every day from school, and he last year he's in 2nd grade. He's going to be in 3rd grade, and I always ask him, "Who'd you play with at recess?" He never remembers their names, but if he does, it's like, then I'll ask him later. I'm like, "Hey, how was Pierce today?" Or "How was Brian today?" You know, because then I can, like, kind of get his brain working. And then I'll always say, "What did you have for lunch?" And so it's like, honestly, like, those are my non-negotiables, are these really small things where I need to ask my kids at least 2 questions about themselves every day to make sure we're like, "Hey, I see you. Yep. I love you. You know, I like you a lot. I'm your number 1 fan."
Yeah.
And then, and then coffee outside in the morning, every morning. Yeah. And I got to move my body every day, whether it's like at the gym or I don't know. So yeah, so I think still working on non-negotiables, and I think they're fluid, right? Like I'm in a certain phase in life. Yeah, it's got to be non-negotiable flexibility because I have lots going on. So
Right. Okay.
yeah,
I love how you worked that out.
Yeah, I did work that out just now. That was great. Thanks for asking that. That was a good one.
Yeah, for sure. So is there any is there one thing of wisdom that you feel compelled to share with our audience before we wrap this up?
Sure. I would say, and your audience is mostly folks who love people
Yeah, we're the loved ones.
In active crisis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I would say, just put yourself as the most important person on the planet first. And take care of yourself like it is the person that you love. And I think the rest will follow suit, So do that. Try that hat for a while. Don't give up on it. Keep trying it. And it's hard to do. It's like the muscle thing, right? It's not going to just happen overnight. I think that we struggle with putting ourselves first and making ourselves a priority because we put other people, these people that we love, right, as a priority. So keep trying to put yourself as number one, because then the rest will fall into place. That's what I would say.
Great.
And just be kind to yourself.
Yeah. Well, I'm totally with you, sister.
Yeah.
Because I was like, well, if I implode, who's going to be here when he pops out the other side?
Fucking A right.
Yeah.
That's it.
So
that's it.
Yeah. So I'm going to put an exclamation point on, please, please, please take care of yourselves.
That's it. Number one.
Yeah. So thank you. This has been just so much fun and delightful. I have loved actually meeting you in person for the first time, because all of our connection previously was just phone and I think messaging. So
thanks for having me. This has really been like a fun thing. So, and it's great to meet you in person too. And I'm glad your son is on his journey right now and he's doing good. And you know what? That's a big accomplishment. 3 months is huge. So
it's huge.
Keep it up.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So I'm going to wrap this up. And so if somebody wants to get a hold of you, can they?
Sure. They can email me. Do you have my email?
Why don't you just say it out loud
it's
for the audience?
Grace Burkhart hair, like the hair on your head, at Hotmail.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
All right. Take care.
You too. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for joining us in this episode. We hope this discussion gives you the empowerment you need during these challenging times. Remember, there is always light after darkness. For more inspiring conversations like this one, subscribe to the show at voicesencourage.com/podcast. We encourage you to share with your friends and family going through similar situations so we can continue to build a strong community of hope and possibility. Start your life-changing journey today. Join our community at voicesencourage.com.